Hello and welcome back to another development tip here at Character Voice Building with me, Nando Garza. Nice to have you back. Today, what we're going to talk about is something that comes up every time somebody asks me how to get it into the industry or stuff like that. And it's basically, what gear do I need to sound great? That kind of thing. And my take on this has always been to prioritize acoustics over your microphone choice. It might not be the most immediate thing to think about, but I truly insist that to get a more professional sound, it's much better to have a somewhat crappy microphone with a great acoustics in your recording space versus an amazing microphone in a crappy space. And it really only boils down to reverberation. You basically want to kill reverberation. Reverberation is basically when the sound wave comes out of your mouth, the waves bounce around the walls, and they create this little mini echoes that become this mesh of just like, that's my reverb. And in general, in VO, that is not desired. You do not want to have that reverberation. You want it to be as dead as you can. So these are a few pointers of what I think will help you if you're just getting started. Yes, of course, having a good microphone is a good thing. And nowadays, it's not crazy expensive. My recommendation would be the Apogee Mic Plus, MIC Plus. I have their original version and I still use it on my mobile rig, and it's amazing. I have heard lots of other voice actors and voiceover artists mention it. I do a podcast where the host uses that microphone. It sounds great. So that's one I would recommend. It's USB. You don't need an extra interface. You don't need another crazy microphone. You don't need the XLR cable. So with the microphone question out of the way, I'm going to push that aside and then let's just focus strictly on the acoustic side of things. As I mentioned, reverb is really the killer of sound quality. It sounds amateurish. And the one thing with reverb that I come across a lot is if somebody records with reverb and they make a mistake and you need to edit it together or something like that, sometimes that reverberation trail just doesn't match from one cut to the other. So making that cut sounds awkward. It sounds weird. Or if you need to cut a portion of the script just early, like right after a word, then you cut off that reverb and it's very noticeable. So it's very, very annoying from the engineering side to have to deal with reverberation in a voiceover recording. So whatever you do, try to avoid that reverberation. Now, how do you go about that? There's many different ways to treat a room. One you'll see a lot is for mixing, which is really involves the first reflections from your speakers. So if you have a speaker over there, you basically put what you do in engineering is you put a mirror on the other side of the wall and then just start moving it until you see the reflection. And that is where you put one of those eggshell absorption things. By the way, don't use eggshells. They don't do anything. Use the actual Auralex absorption pads if you're going to go that way. Otherwise, it's not really worth it. But anyway, so that's kind of what they do. They do the first reflections on the ceiling and everything, and that's good enough for mixing. But for voiceover, you're really looking to kill as much reverb as you possibly can. So the best thing to do would be to surround yourself with just fluffy material and think in all three dimensions. So left, right, forward, back, and also ceiling and floor. This is something that I see neglected a lot, where people will enclose themselves and stuff like that, but they're on a hardwood floor and they are still getting a lot of reverb. It's like, yeah, that's the reflection point right there. So think in all three dimensions. And here's like 3 different examples or a few different levels of what you can achieve with this kind of stuff. You don't need to go out and buy a crazy booth. This is not necessary. For years, I did it in a much simplified way. And really, some of the simplest ways to do it is this. Probably the simplest and most straightforward one, the one I recommend the most, is going into your closet and either enclosing yourself in those hung clothes, or just right in front of those clothes and basically speak into the clothes. A mistake I've seen people make is going to their closet, taking everything out, and then closing the door and then start recording. No. That's going to make it way worse. What you want is that absorptive material. You want those clothes. You want those duvets. You want all those pillows, all those kinds of things. So because in closets there's already hung absorptive material, that's a good way to go about it. Another way that I use it a lot when traveling and stuff like that is at a desk, you can build yourself a little pillow enclosure, basically like a cube, but with an open front, so you can put the microphone there. And also, I usually do like a blanket or something like that on top of me, so that I also don't get reflections from the back. Sometimes what I'll do, and it's very uncomfortable, but I have needed to do it, is basically doing that same little enclosure on a bed and just kneeling in front of the bed, so that also, again, thinking 3 dimensions, up and down, the surface, that will be an absorptive material. So that's a good way to do it. There's drawbacks to that kind of stuff, and we'll talk about later, but those are good ways to start, at least to get you trained into your ears, like, oh, this is what it sounds like without reverb. Now, a slightly more advanced version of this is basically using PVC just from Home Depot or Lowe's to build yourself a little frame around you. Just a rectangle, basically. And you just hang a bunch of duvets or packing blankets or really anything thick or, fluffy in terms of fabric. Any of that kind of stuff helps. If you can do it on top of a rug or stuff like that, or a carpet, then even better. And then, of course, if you're actually going to do this professionally, or you've had enough work to justify it, you can buy a professional booth. And to be honest, it took me many years before I had to do something like this. But it's really not necessary unless it's your full-time job. And this is something you always do. Then I don't think it's necessary. You can do with much, much less. The last thing I want to mention is the fact that the smaller the space, the more boxy the sound. It's difficult to explain, but you can hear it. If you record in a smaller enclosed space versus a larger space, it just sounds boxy and kind of nasally, if you want to put it that way. It has to do with standing waves and reflections from the rooms and wavelength, etc., etc. That doesn't matter. It sounds a little boxy. So if you know how to EQ things, that you could EQ it out. But basically, I would say prioritize, again, that enclosure full of clothes and stuff like that. But if you can afford a bigger space, it will end up sounding better. So the desk pillow cube will sound more boxy than a closed closet with clothes. And that will sound more boxy than an open closet with completely surrounded with stuff. So, just something to keep in mind. So I'll leave you with an extra tip that has to do with this, which is turn off any sources of noise. It's very easy to overlook because you're so used to them all the time that they're there, but your microphone captures that and it becomes a problem. AC is a huge deal. A refrigerator, that's going as well. The fan of a computer, that's another one. So try to minimize those as much as you possibly can. Make it a habit that if you're going to do a recording session, just auditions or stuff like that for an hour, first go and turn off the AC, because inevitably it will come up and you may not notice it, and you start editing, and then suddenly, like, oh my God, this whole take was ruined because there's a bunch of noise. So, yeah, probably best to do that first. Sit, listen and see what you can block out, what you can turn off, and then you'll be good to go. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any requests, any questions, anything you'd like to hear, anything you'd like to learn, please let me know. Leave it in the comments. I would love to hear what you need, what you want, and I'd be happy to help if I can. So yeah, if you like it, please like and subscribe. If you can share, that would be amazing as well. That really helps the channel. And yeah, I'm going to keep working on trying to do more videos. Hopefully I'll do one every week. So yeah. Take care, be kind, thank you for coming, and see you soon.